Hello, Spark fans, and welcome back to Advancing Spark, where I have upgraded, and I'm sorry to everyone who now has to watch this in 4K. We'll see how it works. We'll see if it goes all right. Yeah, should be good. If anything, you should be able to see my screen a little less blurry than it was before if you're trying to watch it on a tiny device, if that's your jam. Anyway, on to what we are here to talk about. One of the things that I got a lot of questions about after talking about Unity Catalog for the first time is the whole permissions model. How does it work? How do you actually secure it? So sure, the sales pitch coming in of going, hey, it's great for security. This is how you manage security of various different tables in the new world. And then no details. And then everyone's like, how does it work? What is it? How does it actually fit together? So that's what we're going to have a quick look through today. Gonna have a look at what the object model looks like, so the hierarchy of catalogs and metastores and all that kind of stuff, how we grant people permissions, and how you see what permissions people have got. So it's kind of allowing you to keep track of everything that's going on inside Unity Catalog, and therefore all of the data that people can see using that new model inside Databricks. That's the plan. As always, do not forget to like and subscribe. Let me know down in the comments how you're currently managing user security, and if there's any patterns that this doesn't quite fit. It's always good to say, yeah, this is what you can do. But what's more important for security is what can it not do that you need? What's a deal breaker of if it can't do this, you can't really use it for security. Be good to know what people are thinking in terms of what you can use this for so far. All right, so on with digging into things. So I've got this knocking around over here. We have key concepts inside Unity Catalog's preview. So I'm just in the Azure documentation. We've got the data governance guide in there. We've got the Unity Catalog and various things in there. So this is the key concepts for Unity Catalog page. And I thought this is good because this has a little object model that just kind of shows how you should be thinking of things, and it's nothing particularly crazy. There we go. We've got a metastore. This is the object that we've created at the account level that we do through the Databricks account portal, not through a Databricks workspace. And we say, I want to create a new metastore, and you give it a security location. Okay, this is where things are going to be kept. Now that metastore you then associate to various different Databricks workspaces, and that's the whole concept of how you have this unified metastore across a load of different Databricks workspaces. So you've got this top level idea of a metastore. Now underneath that you can create various different catalogs. You can have a catalog, a grouping of things inside there. So I can say, well, okay, I've got one metastore, this big chunky artifact, and then I break that up into a few different catalogs depending on the different business domains, different security concerns, different kind of things I'm working with. Going down, schemas, and it's like always schemas/databases, and they use them interchangeably, and it just hurts my soul. For me, they're databases, but whatever, I don't care. We've got this idea of this lower level grouping of tables, and then you've actually got your various different tables, your external tables, managed tables, and views. Now, so far, all we've done when looking through things is just on the managed tables side of things. I will do a different video looking about how we do external tables. It's very, very different because we used to do things like mounting a lake to Databricks. Instead, we can't really do that because we can't ensure that the same things are about the same thing mounted with different names. So the way external tables works in Unity Catalog is very, very different, but we'll go through that in a different video. So you've got objects, views, tables, two different types of tables, and they're our lowest grain of security that we have to date. So we've got this whole idea. Now, one of the things to be aware of is that things aren't going to filter down. And there's certain permissions that you need in order to be able to see that next level down grain of things. So getting that in your head, metastore, catalogs, schemas/databases, your actual objects. We can then switch over, and there's another one of these pages, just that next one of data permissions, which tells us what we can do with those various objects. So they are securable objects. They are things that we can apply security to. Make sense? And then inside there, things that we can do, I mean, we can describe things, we go and see what it is. Most importantly is this list. So once we have a securable object, what permissions can we grant on it? And it's slightly different depending on which of those objects. The main one is usage. And usage is a weird one. Usage is something you might not be used to if you're coming from other like sort of database security concepts. Usage is essentially you're allowed to see what's inside it. So it's not allowing you to select. You don't say you're allowed usage on that table. It's what have you got what's inside that schema? What's inside that catalog? What's inside that meta store? You need usage to be able to explore it. The way I kind of, for me, it kind of makes sense because I've been doing lake-based security for ages. When you had that kind of read, write, and execute, that ability to traverse the path of things that a folder contains, you need that execute permission. That's kind of what usage is doing. So in order to be able to select from a table, you need usage on its parent. You need usage on the schema that it lives inside, and usage on the catalog that lives inside. So it's kind of like a little cascading hierarchy of what you need to be able to do. So usage is super useful. We tend to do it at the group level, but it's saying you're allowed to use everything this thing contains. Select is then much more selective. So that's about saying, well, actually, that individual table, you're allowed to select from that table. You're not allowed to select from that table. You're allowed to select from that table. Now, for any of that to work, you still need usage on the parent containers, but those individual objects, that's then to do with what actual security that we have. And then things like add, modify is, well, okay, if you've got access, if you're allowed usage on that whole schema, are you allowed to add things to it or just read what's in there? So it's kind of like that then fine tuning between modifying and creating. You can create new things, but you can't change an existing thing. You can change existing things, but you can't create new things. There's those different combinations of securables. Now, there are some additional ones if we're talking about credential and external locations, because then that gets into, rather than I'm dealing with an existing SQL object, rather than dealing with someone's already saved that table and I'm just having a look at it. If we're saying, well, I need to create a new table based on external data, I need to read some files and actually just see what's there. I need to write new files if I'm trying to do any kind of data movement. There's permission models that you also need if you're dealing with external tables. So if you're dealing with managed tables, where you're letting the metastore store the data itself, it's going to store it in the kind of managed part of the lake, then you don't need those. So this is just to do when there's a separate lake, you've got your own data lake, and you've told Unity Catalog how to access that data lake, and then you're saying people are allowed to do certain things inside that context. So slightly different ways of working. Now, in the old days, the idea of managed tables, I didn't use them ever. The managed table kind of assumed that you were using DBFS and you were storing data inside Databricks, and it had terrible security, and it's just not a good way to do things. Now that we can say, well, actually, this database is part of Unity Catalog, and that's stored in the Unity Catalog lake, and it's a proper AWS Gen 2 account, and it can have security, you can do all that kind of stuff on it, then it's kind of your choice about whether you want managed or whether you want external. Obviously, be aware the main difference between managed and external, one of the differences, is if you drop a managed table, that deletes your data. If you drop an external table, you're just deleting the metadata reference to those files. The files themselves are staying there. So it kind of depends on how closely coupled you want that security and that management of those things. Okay, and then very, very usefully, getting an idea of what we can do in these different things. So catalogs and schemas, you can say, well, like, you're allowed to create things inside that catalog, or you're allowed to use it. You're allowed to create things inside that schema, you're allowed to use it. Tables, views, externals, it's more about the ability to modify things. So those different types of permission are slightly different depending on where we're looking in that hierarchy. So the kind of idea that we tend to be looking at, we just switch over to whiteboard mode. So if we were saying I've got this a catalog I'm trying to deal with, so I've got my catalog level, and I've got, oh, look at that for writing. That makes sense. You know what that says. Okay, fine. C, A, D. There we go, better. And then we can go inside and we have a look inside that kind of database schema, whatever you want to call it. And then inside there we have, let's say we've got a table, and let's say we've got a view. So if we're trying to say someone needs access to this, we're trying to manage someone, all we're trying to say is they are allowed to go and select from that given table, then they're going to need 3 different bits of security. So based on what we know, we definitely know we can grant a select on that table. And that's fine. That alone will not work. They won't be able to select from that table because they can't see what is inside that database. So to be able to see what's inside that database, they need that usage permission on that database container, schema container, same thing. To be able to see that database, to be able to select what's inside that database, they need that permission at the cat level. They need usage on that catalog. So it's a cascading hierarchy. You need access from the top all the way down to be able to go and see those things. Be aware, these things do not cascade. So if you create someone that kind of usage permission, they don't automatically get usage for any databases inside there. So you need to say, this group of people can access this catalog, and then this other group of people, or the same group of people, can access the database. This other group of people, or just individual people, can access tables. So we're starting to see kind of general patterns appear where, you know, if most of your data is actually held in the same catalog, you might just have a general kind of users group that has everyone has usage on that higher level thing. You can also just do that straight through Databricks. There's kind of a group automatically set up as my account users. My account users can see that catalog. That's fine. I don't have to want to worry about that. And then you can think about carving up the actual databases and the tables inside it. So those levels, that's what you need to think about. Who's got access to what? You need all three working in collaboration for that person to be able to go and select from your table. Now, again, this might be slightly confusing if you're going in there going, but I can see everything and it's never really bothered me. Be aware, if you've got that admin tick inside Databricks, you're going to kind of work around this anyway. So make sure when you're testing this out and you're seeing who can actually see what and how permission security is working, you're not logged in as an admin on your like dev workspace because you won't see this stuff. So admin overrides a lot of these things. Generally, you're working on what you can actually see. Okay, so let's put it in a little bit more context. So you've got two ways of working with security. You've got the code-based one, and there's actually a much nicer database explorer these days for looking at the various different grants and permissions. So first things first, techie, codey way of doing things. A lot of our commands have been extended, so we can go and have a play with these things. So we can go describe table, and I can see most important thing, and I didn't mean to sort. It's a terrible thing to sort that list. You have this idea. So all objects have an owner. So certain things you might say, well, you're not allowed to go and change all these tables. But if you're the owner, you explicitly have permissions on those things that you have created. So be a little bit careful. If you're allowing users to create objects, they're going to have user or owner permissions on the things that they create. And there's commands to switch the owner around and look after that. But be aware there is this concept of there is an owner, and that's whoever created that actual object in the first place. And again, we'll end up with those different commands: usage, select, modify, create. They are our permission types. And we can go and see what's actually going on. So I can say, well, show grants. So I can write a bit of SQL and say, tell me what access people have to a given object. And obviously note that this is all SQL. Now, most of the idea of the permissions model we're dealing with in Unity Catalog is all SQL based. So there's nothing to do with have you got access to that folder in the lake. Kind of like completely giving you that layer of abstraction. We're not worrying about what lake access you've got. We're only caring about what access do you have to things we have registered with that catalog. So I can see show grants on that table, and I can see there's a user, which is me with a different email address, saying I've got select on that table, and that's the object name for that table. So you can go and view it. So if you're trying to say, well, what permissions have been set, you can say what permissions have been set to that principal and get a list of all their permissions, or what permissions have been set on that object and get a list of all the different principals that have access to that particular thing. And that'll be a list of, you know, a principal could be a user, could be kind of a service principal that's coming in, could be a Databricks group. Plenty of things that can be a securable user type, and we just see all the different access controls they have. So if I wanted to say, right, that user has got select on table, as we were saying earlier, that alone is not enough. So I could say I've got that three-part naming in here. I've got that catalog level. I've got my schema level, and I've got my table level. So in order for this select to actually work, and for me to be able to go in there and select that table, I do need the permissions for the two parent objects in there as well. So I'd end up doing something like this. So I can run a bit of SQL and say grant usage on this catalog to this user. Grant usage on the database, catalog.database name, to this user. And then grant select on, oh, that's wrong. Should be table. There we go. So grant select on the table, three-part naming, to that user. So that's the only way I'm going to be able to get that user to be able to select from there, is by having all three of those permissions working in unison. Select is the actual fine-grained one, but usage is what we need in the parents. I mean, the nice part about that is I can have a big permissions model set up and then just turn someone's access entirely off by disabling it right at the top in terms of, well, that person no longer has usage. I can revoke usage on the catalog level to then kind of manage everything underneath. But generally, you just add people to groups and then just remove them from a group and do it like you would any other group-based security model. So we got that. And there's some commands in there, and we can, you can move that the other way around. So rather than grant, you've got revoke. So you can add access, remove access, and play around like that. And, you can wrap all of this in PySpark. So I could run this from PySpark side of things if I wanted to grant to do something like that. I said simplest way is to, if saying, okay, I'm doing something in Python. I can actually do Spark does equal, and then just run it in there. And just treat it as if it's a snippet of SQL. And the nice bit about that, second then making that an S string. So it could say, well, my user is equal to that string. And I can pop my user in there as an F string object. And automate it. Run it in a loop. Go spin off all those things. Add something as a function the moment I finish loading a thing, run a bit of Python that then actually manages permissions on it and automatically assigns that stuff. Loads of things like that we can do. Just kind of makes sense. Whatever model you need to make, you can put in bits and pieces of automation into it as you need it. Cool. All right, so that's the codey way of doing things. Saying, well, actually, how does all this stuff fit together? But actually, over in Databricks SQL side of things, there's a better way of doing things. And it kind of makes me a little sad that it's only available in Databricks SQL, because it means when you're exploring things in your normal workspace, I mean, yeah, we've got the benefit in Unity Catalog of we don't need a cluster turned on to go and have a look what's happening in here. So I can see inside that playcat, I can see my employees database, I can see my various objects inside there. No, I should be able to. There we go. And I can go and have a look at that table and say, well, what's going on there? But that's all I can see. I can't see anything else to do with the permissions. I can't see the grants. I can't see anything going on there. We switch over to Databricks SQL, and again, I don't have a SQL warehouse turned on. The fact that they called it a SQL warehouse, not a SQL endpoint. Not a warehouse. The whole point of going the whole lakehouse thing, if you're going to call it a warehouse. Anyway, if we're in SQL, the Databricks SQL side of things, we can click on data. We get our normal breakdown as Data Explorer. But again, this is a more advanced Data Explorer. This is actually showing us a lot of what Unity Catalog can do. If again, I get my playcat, I can go down to employees, I can see my different tables and my views. If I click on a given table, see I've got those various headers, one of which is permissions. So I can see just automatically inside here that principal of me has got a select on there. I can go up to the employees level and see like the catalog. I can see I've got create and usage. Go to my catalog level, I can see I've got usage. So you can go and actually get this visual idea of what permissions people have and go, oh no, they shouldn't have that permission. I'm gonna go revoke that permission, and you can just manage it visually. And honestly, in terms of the majority of kind of just ongoing BAU management of security, we tend to see people do it via a GUI. People have been doing it via GUIs in SQL Server for God knows how long. Just kind of the way you really expect. I need to add that back in. I can go, actually, no, add in a permission. I want to give them create and usage, as we're saying, and add it back to myself. Add that in, grant, and there we go. So that access, that playing around with things is as easy as that. Now I do have, if we just kind of play around with Windows a little bit, going to make things smaller, going to have a play with things. There we go. So I've got my permissions well there. I've got a little separate window that's logged in as that other user. So this is me on the right-hand side, logged in as kind of my personal account, just kind of seeing how things work. On the left-hand side, this is me as the admin changing around permissions. They can see currently in that catalog. I mean, again, this is the same Databricks SQL in my Data Explorer as a user, looking at employees, and I see these two things. I can see I can't see those other objects. So I can come in here and as the admin and go, ooh, no, actually, I'm not sure they should have access to that. They should only be going through the view because I've got some, I don't know, dynamic data masking or something going on. So I can go in there, I can revoke that, that goes away, and then we should see actually fairly quickly over on the other side, that table disappears. Again, rather than having a catalog that's constantly querying and working with it, because this is actually being done by a live service, we have a fairly quick refresh and we can quite quickly see changes to the security model as the logged in user as it actually happens. We can go back in and go, oh, no, oh sorry, I was wrong. They are actually allowed to see that. Gonna add that access back in. Go in here, grant them access on that side. They now can select from that table, and then we should see they can now go and do it. And let's just have a play on the other side. Let's take away that ability to have usage. Again, we should take that away. And we should see that catalog just disappear entirely on the other side. So they no longer have access to any of those objects. So inside there, no. So they can see the catalog because they've still got that usage on the catalog, but they can't get access to any tables, anything inside that schema, because they no longer have usage on that object. Again, adding it back in, add create. Oops, if I go and add usage, add it back to me, give me that access, go over, see it appear in a second. There we go, quick as that. I've now got access. So it maintains the object and maintains the fact I've only got select on certain objects, but it's just I can disable it at any level of that hierarchy, either by revoking it on the actual individual tables, revoking it on the schema, or revoking it at the catalog level. And that's basically it, really. That whole is that security model is just understanding the idea. We've got that high level catalog. We've got the lower level database / schema referred to as different things, depending on whether it's in code or in the documentation. Great. And we've got the actual individual objects of managed tables, external tables, and views, each of which have their own slight permissions model that we can have a play around with and play with. And yeah, we can go and work with it from there. And that's about it. That's all we really need to understand. Now, there's deeper questions. So in the documentation, it goes into other scenarios such as dynamic data masking and row-level security and various different bits and pieces like that. As we see it currently in Unity Catalog, those things haven't changed from how we used to do it. So you've still got things like the isMember function that you can use in a view to say, is the current user a member of this? If so, filter it. And that's just plugging that logic directly into your scripts. The same as data masking. It's if the user is in this group, then run a regex replace and mask parts of my data. It's just coding it into your code currently. Now, Unity Catalog, when they've talked about doing really, really cool and interesting stuff around the security model, but so far, that is what we have. So we've got catalogs, we've got schemas, we've got table objects and view objects, and we have a few permissions we can do deliberately simplified. You can read it, you can edit it, you can take things away. That's about what we can do. So hopefully that helps kind of solidify how you're thinking about things. Just understanding what we can do in terms of all those things. Again, I was playing around doing things on the user basis, but again, please, please, please use groups. So just if a new user comes in, add them to a group. Even better, use the AD group synchronization and actually just add them to an AD group and give that whole AD group access to things as long as you are synchronizing that AD group with your workspace and your catalog. Again, lots of things now working at the account level, not at the individual workspace level. Again, the idea of those groups, the idea of those users need to be account level users if we're using Unity Catalog and plugging all this stuff in properly. Cool. That is it. Kind of short and sweet. No, really long. Okay, one of those videos. It's fine. Generally, I'll put a link down to the docs. You can go and have a look through that model. Generally, if you're getting started with Unity Catalog, it should be quite easy to pick up those ways of working and how that all fits together. And yeah, any questions, any things you're not clear about, just let me know down in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll be digging more into Unity Catalog and various things we can do in there in future videos. All right, cheers. Oh, buttons.